If you've been subscribed for any length of time, you'll know that I am a huge Jack Reacher fan. I've read all the books, all the novellas, and short stories several times over. And I've seen the movies once. So, I feel confident in saying that I know the character and the stories well enough to be able to give a solid review. And I feel like I'm a pretty good judge of what's good and what's not when it comes to Jack Reacher and his adventures. I've done quite a few reviews in the past. If you go back on the history of the channel, you can find those. I have a playlist called Book Reviews. You'll definitely find them in there. There's no specific Jack Reacher book reviews. Maybe I'll create that going forward, because I plan on going back and actually doing reviews on some of the earlier books that I haven't reviewed. But I've definitely read them all, some of them many, many times. Anyway, all that to say that today I'm going to be talking about the latest novel, The Sentinel, Jack Reacher, book number 25. Alright, so starting off, this one is a little different because it is written not only by Lee Child, who authored all of the other Jack Reacher stories. He's accompanied by his brother, Andrew Child. And I heard a lot of people early on when they saw that it was by Lee and Andrew Child, thinking that it was his son that was writing with him. But no, it's his brother. And I'm not sure how much of the story was written by either one. There were some parts that felt a little different, but it's hard to pinpoint which author was taking lead at that point. I just don't. I guess I'm not that versed in Lee's style to be able to pick that apart. Like, I'd be interested to find out how they jointly wrote the book. Did they switch off chapter for chapter? Did Lee give an outline with like basic points? Did he tell him the story in short form, and then, Andrew wrote the story? I don't know, but the stories, they have the same feel of previous books, and Reacher was still solid as a character. But before I go any further, I should probably tell you that I listened to the audiobook, and I've given lots of praise to the voiced artist Dick Hill, who read most of the audiobooks, all but the last two, and just how great he is. Like, I was really skeptical when Dick Hill retired. I'm actually close, not close, but I know Dick Hill through social media, and actually converse with him somewhat regularly, and I remember him announcing that he was stepping away from Reacher, which is the final. He was basically semi-retired for a period of time, but he was still doing the Reacher books because he enjoyed doing them. And then finally he decided, to step away completely and get rid of his recording studio and really call it quits for voice acting, But with this new Jack Reacher, like I said, or this new narrator, like I said, in the previous book, I was like, all right, this isn't bad. But honestly, I'm beginning to believe like he's an adequate stand-in. Like, I'm really starting to believe him as Reacher. He's got a great voice for it. Like, it's a great Reacher voice, and that's one of the things I was most worried about. Is like, can he read the same way? Like, he does. He reads with intensity, and I feel like the only difference I feel is that Dick Hill did a more distinctive female character voice, where you can really know the difference in who's talking. And that's one thing I ran into in this story, is that there was a portion of the book where I kept forgetting whether one of the characters was supposed to be male or female. And the only thing I could relate that to is that the narrator, was maybe not changing his voice as much as I'm used to. But overall, I think he's doing a great job, and I believe him as Jack Reacher. So I'm happy. I'm as sore as I am to see Dick no longer reading the books. I believe this guy is Reacher, and I'm I'm satisfied. All right, on to the book. So it started off great with a quick little intro confrontation where Jack gets, he gets to stand up for the little guy and put an asshole in his place. Like that typical Jack Reacher narrative. But this little sub-story was not really connected to the main story at all. It was just sort of an intro. It only comes into play, I think, one other time in the story, and not in a big way. So after that, to be honest, the story was kind of slow, which is fine. A lot of Reacher books give you a little time for the story to unfold, and it gets better and better as it goes. However, this one is not the most exciting story. It definitely wasn't as imaginative as most of the books in the past. Honestly, this book and the previous book, Blue Moon, were probably my least favorite so far. And I've talked about this before in previous Reacher reviews, but I just really like my Jack Reacher kicking ass, like kicking so much ass that he doesn't have time to take names. And I've heard a lot of people complain about this ass-kicking, bloodthirsty Reacher. But, I enjoy him. Some of my favorite books have been ones with elaborate scenes with guns blazing and intense physical altercations. And just to speak on that, like, there's been people calling for Reacher to be less bloodthirsty and less, harsh. I don't know how else to say it, but you have to remember what this character has seen. Not necessarily in his military days, but in all these previous books. In one of my favorite stories, Worth Dying For, it's all about a child trafficking ring. And then in Make Me, it's like, Make Me is about a group of people that basically take advantage of suicidal people and then lure them into a trap to torture them for videos on the internet. Like, it's ridiculous. And then there's Past Tense, which is the book before Blue Moon, I think, which I really enjoyed. I actually thought when I read that, there's like, oh, they're getting back to the Reacher I love. So I was a little disappointed when the next book, Blue Moon, kind of let me down a little bit. But in Past Tense, it's all about hunting human beings. So there's like a legitimate reason for Reacher to be a little dark when it comes to bad guys, a little bloodthirsty, a little just, I don't know, quick to crush the competition. But anyway, so those are my favorite types of books, and I don't understand really why people don't like that. So some people were complaining, and maybe they're happy with these last two books. I don't know. But I think for the most part, I don't think I'm in the minority here. So this story had a couple of those physical altercations that I enjoy. One that I'll talk about in just a minute, but it just didn't feel as dire. It wasn't nearly as exciting as in previous books. Alright, so I mentioned how I thought the book was kind of unimaginative. And one of the main reasons I say that is because the overall plot of the book is it's steeped a little too much in the current political climate for me. I like having the feel of the United States, the feel of, Reachers, Middle America, right? I like the feel of it. I like familiar things about the setting, but I don't like it to be too on the nose. And this story centered around Nazis, neo-Nazis, Russians, and election interference. Like, I thought that was just it's a little too right now. Like, I don't know. I go to these books to escape a little bit, and I'm already kind of bombarded by the, current politics of the day, and it's like, I don't know. I hear about election fraud and election meddling and Russian interference and neo-Nazi groups, and like I hear about this stuff in real life all the time. So yeah, it seemed a little lazy, honestly, to put that in. I mean, I'm sure. I mean, it could have been a point they were trying to make, but it's almost like if this story would have been about coronavirus, if it would have been centered around the coronavirus, I don't know. It just wasn't. Like I said, it lacked imagination. It felt a little too easy to make that the storyline. So I'm not saying that Lee is running out of ideas, but I had never really noticed this before in previous books. I've never noticed him write in stuff that was currently happening, other than general ideas like the dark web, the deep web, which was mentioned in Make Me. It was all about that. But for it to be literally about potential Russian interference in the election, I just thought it was a little too much like real life, Anyway. Okay, so now for a couple things that I did enjoy in this book. There was a legitimate fight in this book. And if you know Jack Reacher, he doesn't have very many legitimate fights. He usually just completely dominates and crushes anyone who stands up to him. And in this book, someone actually gave him a little bit of a fight. And I thought that was nice. Like someone's like, hey, we should have him have a hard time fighting this guy. Now, in previous stories, he's had a hard time defeating a foe, but it's almost always because of extenuating circumstances. Like something is physically wrong with Jack, or he's tied up and someone is beating him, or something like that. Or it's like, there was one book where he was in an underground lair, and so the ceiling was so low, it took away his height advantage, like things like that. But in this one, he had a legitimate fight with a Russian dude, and the guy actually got a few blows in, got the upper hand for a minute. So I thought that was nice. Another thing I like is that they bring up the fact that Reacher is claustrophobic, which, like I said, he's been in these situations before where he's in confined spaces, but I don't remember them making that a big deal. Like I said, he was in this deep underground bunker in this previous book where he was deep underground and there was like a 4-foot high ceiling and he was basically crawling around. And I don't remember them mentioning him being afraid of confined spaces. I don't remember it. And if they did, I don't think they made it a big deal. But in this book, they bring it up and they make it a point to say that's basically his only vulnerability. So I thought that was a nice touch. They made Reacher a little more vulnerable, and they made him able to get punches landed on him. So, what was weird though? This is something like right towards the end of the book, and I don't, like I said, I'm not going to give away. I don't like to dive deep into details. I don't want to give away twists when I do these reviews, but I'll hit main points and I'll try to avoid spoilers. So, but I do have to say, if you've already read the book, the housekeeper at the end of the book was a bit of a stretch. It was a little bit on the nose. Like it was like, really? Is this a James Bond book? Like, what are we doing? All right. So, in conclusion, all in all, this book was okay, I guess. It wasn't great, but I don't feel like any of these books in the series are terrible. They're all well written, and I love the main character. So I'm gonna keep coming back for more. I just hope the future, in the future, I get more of the Jack Reacher that I love. the ass-kicking, no name-taking Jack Reacher. Anyway, if you enjoy videos or podcasts like this, here's what I do. I don't only do book reviews. What I do on this channel, what I do on this podcast is each day I try to pick a random topic, something that I'm interested in, and talk about it at somewhat length. Usually 10 to 15 minutes, but sometimes it goes longer. And it's usually on topics such as like entertainment and pop culture. Every once in a while I dive into other stuff like personal life stories, stories from my questionable youth. But for the most part, it's entertainment and pop culture related. If you're interested in that sort of thing, subscribe to the channel, please. If you're interested in getting a new topic in your feed every day, hearing me rant about it, I would really appreciate your subscription or for you to follow or favorite the podcast. And if you decide to stick around, if you decide to follow or favorite or subscribe to the channel, then I'll talk to you again tomorrow. Thanks for stopping by.